Welcome to the Caribbean. Our team of Lake Mary Preparatory School staff and students have come to beautiful Puerto Rico and its smaller island of Vieques to study culture, geography, and social issues that exist here and throughout the Caribbean.
From the bustling and trendy Condado with cafes, nightclubs, and beaches,
to the lush tropical rainforest with its waterfalls and flowers,
to the brick streets and the 500-year architecture of Old San Juan, Puerto Rico offers a glimpse of the past,
the taste of the present,
and perhaps a vision of the future for the many Caribbean nations, and indeed, the world.
Located in the Greater Antilles, Puerto Rico was once home to an indigenous group known as the Taínos. Much more gentle and peaceful than their aggressive relatives, the Caribs of the Lesser Antilles, the Taínos ruled their land with their love of nature for several centuries until the arrival of the Spaniards. In the early years, the gentle Taínos cooperated with these Europeans until their hunger for gold and new resources resulted in the slavery and killing of thousands of these indigenous people. In fact, it was thought that the Taíno tribes were virtually wiped out by the Spaniards until recent DNA tests discovered that more than 60% of modern Puerto Ricans have Taíno blood. The Spaniards continued their rule of Puerto Rico until the Spanish-American War and the subsequent Treaty of Paris in 1898, when the United States took control of the island, ending 400 years of domination by Spain and regaining a new life as a U.S. territory. Puerto Ricans then became citizens of the U.S. in 1917. Puerto Rico played an important role in the development of the Caribbean, in part because of the Bay of San Juan, where ships from all countries could take refuge during hurricanes, where goods could be shipped into and out of the island, and where its ideal location as a military base served to protect the island from invasion. Now a World Heritage Site, here we see the fortress, officially known as Fort San Felipe del Moro, as it may have looked when it protected the Spanish from attacks by the Dutch and the English so many years ago. Today the fortress is managed by the U.S. National Park Service and is visited by thousands of tourists each year. Just beyond the fortress grounds, the city of Old San Juan still boasts ornate, wrought iron railings, Spanish and Moorish architecture, statues of famed Spanish conquerors, brick streets, and a port full of modern cruise ships filled with tourists. And just a bit more than a mile to the east, the popular Condado area stands in great contrast with its high-rise buildings, beaches, expensive hotels, and shops such as Cartier, Ferragamo, and Gucci. Just a short ride to the southeast of San Juan, we come to LMP, the rainforest. At a height of more than 3,500 feet above sea level, parts of LMP receive rainfall of more than 200 inches per year. At El Portal LMP, the visitor center, our student group studies the variety of plant and animal life found nearby. We learn interesting facts, such as that of the coquí, a species of frog endemic to Puerto Rico, along with several species of bats, the only mammal native to the island, and charged with keeping the insect population under control. We also see that there are many types of ecosystems within this one rainforest, from the forest floor to the tree canopy high above. Difference in elevation also creates a difference in the elements of a particular section of forest. Finally, we learn that rainforests throughout the world are responsible for many of the miracles of medical science and for much of the building materials used in every country. This caused us to reflect upon the question: how might we change our lifestyle and even our politics to provide better protection for rainforests around the world? Our group now leaves behind the rainforest, the beaches, and the cities of the main island of Puerto Rico, and we board our small, 9-passenger planes to explore the smaller Puerto Rican island of Vieques.
While hundreds of years ago, travel between Caribbean islands was done by dugout canoes, today while traveling, visitors usually use commercial airplanes or local ferries. Behind me, you see the Vieques Airport, where we are awaiting the arrival of the rest of our group. Only half of us could fit on one plane, so the rest of our group should arrive shortly. From its past as the last stronghold of the indigenous Taino people, to its colonization by the Spanish, as decades as a sugar-producing island, and finally to a U.S. Navy base, Vieques has a long and politically charged history.
When the Spaniards colonized the main island of Puerto Rico around the year 1493, the smaller island of Vieques was left relatively untouched, and the Taino inhabitants here continued their simple, peaceful lifestyle for a few years longer than their relatives just 8 miles across the water. However, by 1514, word has spread to Vieques that the Tainos on Puerto Rico were being abused, enslaved, and murdered by the Spaniards. In hopes of defending the Taino people and their culture, the caciques, or chiefs, of Vieques loaded their canoes with their strongest men and launched a surprise attack on the Spanish outposts on the eastern end of Puerto Rico. Unfortunately for them, their crude weapons were no match against those of the Spaniards, and many of the brave Tainos from Vieques were killed in the battle, and their families were removed from their homes and taken as slaves to the main island. Vieques sat abandoned for many years, and there were several failed colonization attempts by the English, French, and the Dutch. During this time, the island served mainly as a resupply station and hideout for pirates. Even today, the highest peak on the island is known as Mount Parada, Pirate Mountain. In 1843, the Spanish resumed control of Vieques, ironically with the help of a wealthy French landowner who became the island's first governor. Under his leadership, Vieques became a sugar-producing island, an industry that continued until the arrival of the U.S. Navy in the 1940s.
Here we have remnants of the U.S. Navy's 60-year occupation of Vieques. These bunkers held weapons and other machinery used for practicing military maneuvers. For years, the people of Vieques disliked the constant booming of bombs and roaring of jets. They also complained about the ailments caused by the many chemicals used by the U.S. Navy. However, they relied on the stable economy provided by the U.S. military personnel.
By 1947, the U.S. Navy had expropriated 2/3 of Vieques, displacing thousands of citizens and shutting down towns. Here, our route tours the ruins of the town of Playa Grande, which boasted one of the largest sugar mills on the island, a barber shop, clinic, grocery store, and dozens of homes. Many of its residents had to relocate to the main island of Puerto Rico or to nearby St. Croix. Abandoned for more than 60 years, Playa Grande is all but taken over by the forest and the wild horses that live in it. As Leah mentioned earlier, many Viequenses were not pleased with the military presence on their island, and for decades many protests were held. After a civilian security guard was accidentally killed during bombing practice in 1999, protests became more intense and received international attention. After much political debate, the final Navy camp on Vieques closed in 2003, and all the Navy lands were transferred to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. This makes Vieques National Wildlife Refuge the largest wildlife refuge in the Caribbean, protecting 17,771 acres of forest, beaches, mangrove systems, sea life, and dozens of bird species. Today, adventurous tourists and school groups like ours visit Vieques to take advantage of the unique, eco-sensitive environment the island offers. Most will sample the cuisine, take pictures in front of the 300-year-old ceiba tree, hike in the hills, or kayak in one of the world's most bioluminescent bays.
Known locally as Protest Rock, this boulder serves as a canvas for murals protesting the U.S. military occupation of Vieques. Today, with the military gone, the rock still serves to protest poverty and social issues.
Every Caribbean island has a port where goods are shipped in and items are exported. Each island also has a seaside area where tourists and locals go to see and to be seen. Vieques is no exception. This is the Malecón of Vieques, located on the south side looking over the Caribbean Sea. It is believed to be the location where the indigenous Tainos first spotted Columbus ships, the beginning of their end.
For a time, the Spaniards abandoned the island of Vieques, but left one thing behind: beautiful Pasofino horses. Over the year, the horse population soared, and now it's common to see herds of wild horses roaming the streets, or to see kids riding horses as they run their daily errands.
Throughout the Caribbean, islanders struggle to find the means to care for their unique problems and natural resources. As with many Caribbean islands, government funds are not enough to care for animals such as dogs, cats, or even wild horses. Here in Vieques, the citizens maintain the Vieques Humane Society and Animal Rescue.
As we saw earlier with the Vieques Humane Society, residents tend to form organizations to care for their island. Another example is the Vieques Conservation and Historical Trust. This organization cares for artifacts and teaches the local youth how to care for their eco-sensitive island.
In addition to its natural beauty and interesting culture, Vieques provides researchers with important clues to the past, in particular regarding the migratory patterns of the early Caribbean people. Amulets carved into the shape of the Andean condor were found, although there are certainly no Andean condors on Vieques, and some were carved from materials not found on the island. These artifacts date back 2,000 years. With our work painting at the Humane Society, and the collection of nearly 30 bags of trash we picked up at various beaches, we hope we left the island just a bit nicer than we arrived. We also learned many lessons, and through our Caribbean cooking competition, everyone learned that Thomas can make a mean batch of mango salsa, while our fellow traveler, Ariana, is a master at creating yucca stuffed peppers. More importantly, we leave with a couple of thought-provoking essential questions. Questions we can debate, but for which we'll probably never have definite answers. Were condor designs and other artifacts brought along with the earliest arrivals to the Caribbean? Or were there trade routes throughout the Americas long before the arrival of Columbus? And what of Columbus and the Spaniards? Were they conquering heroes, establishing the modern Caribbean we know today? Or were they villains, who forever destroyed the culture of the indigenous people?